So this game, Troubleshooters, is quickly skyrocketing up my list of all-time favorite SRPGs. I like making videos on games I enjoy playing, and on God, by like hour 5 or 6 into the game, I was like, damn, I really need to talk about this. And as usual, none of my IRL friends are really into SRPGs, so I have to yell into the void in video form. Okay, anyways. Troubleshooters Abandoned Children, and I'll just call it Troubleshooters going forward, is a Korean SRPG mixed in with some visual novel elements. People are saying it's like XCOM, but I've never really played XCOM, so I really don't know about that. But it checks all my boxes. Anime aesthetics? Check. Grid-based? Check. Sword and sorcery? Check. But it's also got guns, and it's in a modern-day fantasy setting. The main character in Troubleshooters is Albus, a young upstart who started a troubleshooter company. And a troubleshooter company is essentially a government-sanctioned private security firm, but really it's just a legal mercenary group. His motive is to rank up his troubleshooter agency in order to gain enough security clearance to access information regarding the circumstances around his parents' death. I think I got that right. So throughout the game, he grows his company, hires more people, solves crime, and so on and so forth. I'll go into more details about the plot later, but I'll be sure to spoiler warning when that happens. I will say though, the storytelling in this game is very fantastic. Narratively, it time jumps and flashes back quite often, but the writers made it extremely easy to follow. Okay, let's talk about the gameplay first. The thing that I loved most about the gameplay is the map design. Perhaps this is a byproduct of me sticking mostly to high fantasy medieval-based SRPGs, but seeing a recognizable urban setting being worked into an SRPG map design has been so cool. From having to fight through mazes in a back alley, to dodging snipers camped on pedestrian overpasses, to running down an outback road with brushes and getting ganked from either side, it was just a very different experience to what I was used to. One of my favorite maps was based on a residentially area, large maze-like map that has you fighting through low-rise buildings and the streets underneath them. A good mix of open areas on roads and tight spaces and alleys. There were snipers perched sporadically, so you have to move carefully, but you have to move swiftly as well. In general, I really like how elevation was handled in this game. It's not overbearing like it was in Tactics Ogre Reborn or Triangle Strategy, where everything is a slope and you're constantly fighting uphill or downhill. In this game, it is more tiered and defined, where you're either on the high ground or you're on the low ground. It's not easy to switch your elevation, so you have to commit to where you send your units. There are a couple of maps in the quote-unquote wilderness where they did do some of those TOR/TS hilly, rocky areas where elevation is kind of gradual and maze-like. Those were a little unpleasant and I didn't enjoy them as much. Hey, this is Max from the editing room. A bit of a time skip here. I started writing the script before starting the DLCs, and the DLCs most definitely had some of my favorite maps too. For the character unit building aspect of it, I also thought it was done very well. It struck the right balance between customization but still keeping things relatively locked in. Each unit starts off in a base class, and you get to pick and swap between two advanced classes. There are class overlaps, but even when two units share the same class, their unlockables in that class differ. This is on top of the base differences in each unit, such as elemental affinity and weapon choices, so no two units feel the same even if they're in the same class. The mastery system is where the customization really shines. Masteries are mostly passive skills for you to mix and match and slot into your units. There are supposedly over 1,000 of them, and thankfully, of that 1,000, your options are probably narrowed down to half based on your unit and your class. It may seem intimidating at first, but the game actually does a really good job funneling you into some decent default choices. First of all, there are masteries you unlock as you level in a class. These masteries roughly push you into a playstyle or stats they want you to spec into. They're by no means best in slot, but they do give you an idea how the devs want you to play the class. Secondly, there are mastery sets. Mastery sets are bonus passives that unlock if you have 4 specific masteries equipped. The game tells you what the bonus passives will be, and provides hints to which masteries you are missing to form a set. So you can pick and choose what sets you want to work towards. It's another way for the game to guide you into selecting masteries. Thirdly, enemies share the same mastery pool as you, and the game tells you when a mastery effect activates. In that sense, a lot of times you see something trigger or you get hit by it on the field before you even get access to it. So all in all, the mastery system was pretty easy to understand, and while I don't claim to have built some crazy good min-maxed builds, I did put together some pretty coherent ones that got me through the game. It struck the best balance between customizability without leaving you out to dry with an incoherent build. For the other game systems and mechanics, the game mostly does a pretty good job explaining the game system. Anything that gives you a buff or debuff usually has an additional hover window that talks about what it does. The help screen is also pretty detailed and even includes information down to the battle calculations. There are some oversights in the game system clarity though. This is squarely into nitpick territory, but I'll bring it up anyways. I think they don't explain ground effects very clearly. Specifically, I cannot find any detailed information about what spiderweb does. I think I figured it out through trial and error, and fortunately I didn't really get punished for it that hard at least. It's sometimes also a bit hard to find info on your pet summons. Drones and characters, you can open up the class selector and you can see a breakdown of level ups and class characteristics, but I can't seem to find such a menu for pets. I can kind of work around it by looking at the entry in the codex, but okay, whatever. As for the difficulty of this game lets you toggle between difficulties at any time. In addition to that, it has a challenge mode which slaps an independent difficulty modifier on top of whatever difficulty you're already playing at. My understanding of challenge mode is it's a way to catch lower level missions up to your current level so you don't breeze through maps you want to replay. I didn't know this when I was first writing the script, but there are even more additional modifiers you can add to maps, such as high risk, high reward, which is what everyone turns on when they're trying to farm stuff. I didn't know this until I started reading guides on how to farm maps efficiently. I played on normal. I don't consider myself a very tactical srpg player, and I thought normal was just the right difficulty for me. Base game story mode wasn't that hard, but there were a few times towards the end when I cleared a map limping and on life support. But this wasn't because it was hard, it was because I didn't respect the difficulty and I played way too fast and loose for a blind playthrough. On normal difficulty, I can confidently say you can probably clear all maps in the base game with any semi-coherent build and gear as long as you play carefully. I want to give an example. I don't know what point I'm trying to make with this example, but I guess I just wanted to talk about it. It's the level 45 violent mission. There's a road where you will absolutely get rained on by a squad of support fire snipers and gunners. For every attack you tank or dodge, you have to tank or dodge another 4 or 5. The map gimmick is that you have to quickly push through that roadway, through the fire support, or you get flanked on 3 sides. When I was playing blind, I thought this was a huge difficulty spike, and I was wondering if it was time for me to actually cobble together proper builds. But I noticed generic units that get deployed with you on this map actually comes with smoke grenades, which drops range attack accuracy, meaning it's the perfect solution for this map. It still took proper quote-unquote srpg play to get through the corridor without suffering losses, but my point is you can probably beat the base game on good strategy fundies and using whatever the game gives you. After beating both DLCs, I can gladly say the difficulty spiked appropriately. In the first DLC, White Line Black Witch, the generic enemy variants came with pretty high block and enough damage to wreck your squishies. There are also boss robots that can both damage sponge and OHKO even your tanks. For both of these, you actually need specialized builds and strategies to handle them. At that point in the game though, I basically collected enough mats through regular gameplay to cobble together specialized builds to address these threats. The second DLC, Crimson Crow, was probably half build check and half srpg fundies check. Everyone is level capped, so you can't power through the content through level difference anymore. In addition to the high block or defense from the first DLC, a lot of enemies come with skills or min-max stats that are built to be good. I guess the beauty of this game is that all human enemies share the same pool of masteries as the player character, so any quote-unquote BS is available to both sides. This beauty does not extend to the killer robots though. They're raid bosses through and through and quite BS to deal with. Satisfying and felt fair to beat up, but you can be damn sure I was bitching about them the entire time. Having to do builds and gear properly fired off a different type of neurons in my brain. The same ones that got me hooked to Path of Exile for like 5,000 hours. The theory crafting, the customizing part. I'm not the type to break out spreadsheets and calculators to min-max the hell out of builds, but I do like playing that give or take skill tree Tetris type of thing. The base game wasn't really hard enough for me to worry too much about builds, but the DLC definitely was, and it was fun to sit in menus for like 20 minutes and then jumping into a mission for a test run. I want to reiterate, I barely spent any time grinding. To clarify, I can count on one hand how many times I booted up a mission for the sake of grinding materials and drops, and not for the sake of wanting to test run a build or for, to replay a fun mission. With that said, there are a few instances where I depleted a specific material to finish gearing up a character. I can imagine at higher difficulties you will have to grind for gear with the right modifiers or grind to upgrade existing gear, but on normal, I was fine. About the localization. This may seem like a weird segue from gameplay to localization, but it's mainly about the tooltips and the help section copy being a little bit sketchy. There are typos here and there, and honestly, I didn't find some of the explanations very satisfactory, but I give it a pass because I love the game and I'll gladly make any excuses I have to. Another issue I have with the localization is exacerbated by an actual UX nitpick that I have. For these dialogue options that affect the map, there are usually up to 4 options. These are usually about how you want to divide up the team or where you want the team to enter the map from, and so on and so forth. The game also provides you with a lot of information about the pros and cons about each option through dialogue. However, when it comes to time to pick, the information isn't re-presented to you at the point of decision. Sometimes there are tooltips that you can hover over that presents you some information, but most of the time it most definitely does not present all the information that you need to make these decisions. Having to remember 4 options is a bit much, so I wish the presentation of this information was a little bit more detailed at the point of decision. So this, combined with a shaky localization, can make these decision points a little bit tricky. I will reiterate, localization is a very hard thing to do. The localization is not perfect, but still a very, very good job, and a far better job than I could ever do. There are moments that made the game unclear for me, but 95% of the time I had no issues with it. Excited to talk about the story now. Side note, I'm always worried about talking about story because, frankly, I never think too hard about both the plot or the characters. People throw around the term lack of media literacy or reading comprehension all the time, and I get it, but I simply don't think that hard or analyze a story or its characters like it's English class. I'm engaging with it at a very surface level, and I apologize in advance if I misinterpreted an ongoing theme or a character moment or something, I don't know. So, based on my surface level failing grade media literacy and reading comprehension of the story and the characters, I really liked it. The story has a million things going on, but it was always presented extremely well and clearly. It introduced a lot of characters and a lot of intertwining storylines and a lot of flashbacks. However, it was always presented in a very clear manner. I'm especially impressed by how well it keeps you oriented despite utilizing flashbacks way too much. I'd say it's useful that each scene is anchored relative to an event that has already happened or in anticipation of an event that's about to happen. I think it also helps that the story is a slow burn, and the base game is upwards of 100 hours if you don't blitz through it. The game doesn't rush, so it gets to drip feed you information at its leisure, and it never feels like an expo dump. Specifically about the story, it's very reminiscent of the Asian comic, Asian cinema triad drama genre. For every plot or scene with Albus and his crew, there are equal amounts of emphasis on the antagonists. The story highlights the struggles and dynamics of the different gangs that are vying for power and relevancy within the city. When Albus gets called for a job, in his perspective, it might just feel like another day in the office. Gang stirring shit up somewhere, you show up, beat up gang members, and then you go home. But the game does an excellent job laying out the drama between or within the gangs that led to this crime of the day showdown with our protagonists. Why were they stirring shit up now? What led to it? What caused this specific gang to act the way that they did? All in all, there's a very intricate storyline related to the different underworld powers in the story that gets woven very well into Albus' storyline. It's very well done. The base game ends extremely abruptly, and none of the plot threads get closed off. I didn't even know I wandered into the endgame map. It just ended in what felt like partway through the game. I was wondering if it was something like DQ11 or Nier Automata, where credits roll around 2/3 of the way through. After finishing the DLCs, it really opened up even more plot threads while closing very few. They've made it clear they're creating a sequel that continues the story, but I see the sequel introduces new characters in a new setting, so I don't know if one sequel is really gonna cut it. For the characters, I don't think any of them are anything too special, but all of them are pretty unique and they get pretty decent character moments throughout the game. I guess when the base game is 100 hours long, every character gets their time to shine. The game doesn't really waste side characters either. If a named side character gets introduced and they have a unique portrait, the chances are they'll be relevant to the story again at some point. I don't know if the devs are just recycling assets by writing side characters back in, or had legit some sort of grand plan from the start. But it's appreciated nonetheless. Okay, about the main cast, and I'm going to single out two of the characters here. Layton is a weird one because he joins really late into the base game. We get his backstory, but he never really got that much time to really come through as a character for me. Like after he joined the company, he's just kind of chilling there apathetically. I guess apathy might be a theme because part of his motivation was maybe guilt over enabling the big bad evil guy. I don't remember clearly, I need to read up on his bio. Oh wait, the game doesn't have an in-game character bio. I guess that's another nitpick. Layton is probably the most complex character to play due to his dancing mechanics. Conceptually, he's really cool, just hard to pull off, and for me he just turned into a CC bot. I also want to point out he's really cool in cutscenes, but his in-game model is goofy AF, like a sleep-deprived zombie, and the woo voiceover he does is really loud, and its English voice lines come off kind of funny. I shouldn't really be making fun of people for speaking their non-native tongue, so I'm sorry. The other character I want to point out is Anne. I think this is the first time I've played a game or watched an anime genre adjacent thing where a 15-year-old actually comes off like a 15-year-old. Like, she acts like she's 15, talks like she's 15, and worries about 15-year-old things. Maybe she's a bit more childish than 15, but the bottom line is she doesn't come off like the JoJo type of 15-year-old. But my issue with Anne is they didn't give her 15-year-old animations. I don't like the way her idle animation is, and I don't like the camera angle when she pops her AoE heal. It's a little bit icky. But okay, wait, let's take a step back. How is it legal to enlist a middle schooler into a a troubleshooter company to fight crime? Wait, even before Albus hired Anne, the local police department just gets her to show up to heal injuries after the fact. Does she even get paid? Hold up. Okay, 2 steps back. We know Anne's juggling middle school and working at the Troubleshooter agency. She alludes to having to skip class or having to catch up on homework. The agency has office hours, and we know this because people ask to get off work early throughout the game. And Albus is always really apologetic for calling people to solve crime after the office hours. Which begs the question, does office hours even make sense as a troubleshooter agency? Feels like a bit counterintuitive to have office hours when crime never really sleeps, right? Maybe everyone should just be on call. I guess office hours make sense since there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of things are administrative. I guess it's good that these things are done off screen because office work wouldn't make for a very fun srpg. I just thought the plot thread where Albus feels bad for making people work OT a bit amusing because it's like what you signed up for. They even went out of the way to make fun of some of the other washed troubleshooters for refusing to work on evenings or during bad weather. And not to mention, most of the time it's time to pay people, it's the employee that's asking to get paid, like he doesn't remember to pay his crew. Okay, anyways, as mentioned earlier, I wish there was a way to recap the story or catch up on character bios. It's a long game with a lot of plot threads and a lot of characters to keep up with. Sometimes the narrator or the cutscene drops a bomb in a really deadpan matter-of-fact way and I'm like, hold up, did I miss a part of the plot or is this something completely new? In a way it's good because not everything needs to be reviewed in a dun-dun-dun way, but it just appreciated if there was a bio to review what I should or shouldn't know. In the original script of the video, I dedicated this entire section to my progress through the DLCs because as of writing the first draft, I haven't really gone through the DLCs that much. But the astute viewer will know that I've alluded to finishing both DLCs, and it's true, so this entire section can be scrapped, but I do want to include my thoughts on the final map. So the final map of the final DLC was kind of bullshit, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think it was balanced around doing it blind the first time around, especially since the game doesn't give you enemy info until you've defeated them a few times. I had to go online to read some strategies, and the one that worked for me is getting Misty to bum rush Pascal, and then valiantly sacrificing herself while the rest of the squad gets in position. From there, it's just standard strategies against Destrons. I managed to forget to equip ice grenades on Layton, which just makes him completely useless because he does nothing except for throw ice grenades, but my Ice Frog Princess clutched out a few times. Anyways, quickly wrapping up now. It was a fantastic 200 hours spent. It honestly didn't even feel like it was 200 hours. I didn't even need to grind to hit that 200 hour mark. But anyways, yeah, great game. Can't wait for the second one.